T.S. Eliot, uh, his uh, his modernist ideas, okay, and then his criticisms like tradition and individual talent. I think I had started a bit of this tradition and individual talent. Then we'll move on to function of criticism, dissociation of sensibility, objective correlative. Okay, so these are some major theories of T.S. Eliot, and you can see that you know in the modern era, T.S. Eliot, as I was telling you last class, he is the father of English criticism. I.A. Richards, followed by Eliot. Okay. So I had started, as I was telling you last class, a little bit we had done, but today I give you a brief introduction of Eliot, his background, his biographical introduction. Today we'll be moving over to his criticisms. Okay, and also if you remember, I started a bit with the discussion of tradition and individual talent. Now, I had said that in my previous class, it was published in 1919, 1919. Okay. And now, in this tradition and individual talent, like other critics, like other theorists also, here T.S. Eliot is giving his idea about poetry. But you will see that unlike the previous generation, romantic generation, they said they did not connect much. Okay, they connected, but not much with tradition. But Eliot is different. He is connecting, art, especially poetry, with the tradition, and that is why he named it as tradition and individual talent. Okay, so Eliot is very much keen on critical thinking. Okay, so you know that he is a great creative writer, great poet. Okay, but apart from that, he when it comes to criticism, he gives a lot of emphasis on critical thinking. Okay, and I think we have discussed this, that he said that criticism is inevitable as breathing. So just like we breathe, we make a criticism out of everything. Okay, and he says that uh, he he talks about the habit of praising a poet. Okay, you highly praise a poet very highly when you see some individuality, some kind of some kind of uniqueness when you find in him. Then when you are criticizing that poet, you're making a criticism out of his poetry, then you're giving high praises for his individual thoughts. Okay, so Eliot says that actually poetry should be very objective, and it should be an intellectual element. Okay, and then he says the whole of past literature is will be the bone. Okay, see what he's trying to say. In tradition and individual talent, he says that you cannot avoid literature. If you're saying you're individualistic writer, that doesn't mean that there is no tradition in you. Okay, because he's very practical actually. See, history, if whatever we are today is because of our past. Okay, because my ancestors built the house, so today I'm living comfortably, so there's always a past of everything. Okay, or maybe my parents did not build a house. Okay, so when they are gone, they have departed this world, I'm homeless. Okay, so this is just an example from our day-to-day life, from our very simple life. But he's in the similar way, he's trying to say that a great poetry also has tradition. Okay, whatever it is today, whatever the style of writing is there today, whatever the content of writing is there today, has got some influence of the past. Okay, of the genetic past. Okay, here genes is about art, about poetry. So he says that if you are a poet, okay, then the skeleton of your poetry, okay, or the skeleton of you as a poet is the tradition. Okay, the skeleton is the tradition. Okay, and then that poet becomes the poet in a true historical sense. And that literature can only be great that has got a sense of tradition deeply embedded in his part of poetry or literature. All right. So he he says that the whole of literature of Europe start from Homer, okay, in earliest literature, and you if you take the whole body of literature of Europe, of particularly Homer's country, okay, it has got a very swift movement, okay, and it has the composition of the poetry also in the coming years after Homer, years after Homer, one by one, okay, they have certain order that he has marked through his reading. He says that if you take Homer, I'm repeating for you, if you see the example of Homer, then you will see after Homer many poets came in that European part of the country. Okay, so year after year great poets came, but Eliot says that they had got certain similar order, they have one order. Okay, and then he says that no poet has his complete meaning alone. Okay, see what a big claim he's making. He says no poet has his complete meaning alone. And if you want to evaluate a poet, if you want to make a criticism of a poet, then you must set a poet in contrast and comparison with the dead poet. Okay, this he calls the touchstone method. Okay, please remember this. This is the whole juice of his tradition and individual talent. If you want to make a sincere evaluation or criticism of a poet, then you will have to make a contrast and comparison among the past poets. Okay, then only you can make a proper evaluation of a poet. All right, and he says that there is a very great connection between past and present writer. They are not disconnected, they are deeply connected, they're deeply embedded with each other. Okay, so that is why he says, he comes to the conclusion that if you see an artist, you can judge the artist by the standards that he uses of the past. Okay, all right. So whatever the standard, the way that he uses the past, the more intellectual way he uses the part shows him, judges him to be a great poet. Okay. So this idea is very much similar to Matthew Arnold had actually introduced this touchstone idea. Okay, in order to keep two things simultaneously, and if you want to test a thing, okay, you can evaluate it in terms of comparing and contrasting with the other one. Then only you'll be able to evaluate uh, very
Ma'am,
without.
uh,
Yes,
ma'am, sorry for interrupting. Ma'am,
yes,
ma'am, what does it mean by dead poets?
dead dead
Yeah. No,
dead
dead poet
poet.
means the poet of the past, or means some other relation he is making by saying dead
No, no,
poets.
no. What do you think?
The poets of
As a
the past, the
literal.
poets of the past.
Yes, yes, absolutely past. And dead poets means tradition, the poetic tradition. Make a note of it. Okay, dead poets means poetic tradition. Okay,
Okay, okay, ma'am.
so
Thank you, ma'am.
what you are doing? Yes, Nidhi, what you are doing? You are bringing the dead poet in use. Okay, that means you are bringing the poetic history, you are bringing the poetic past to your contemporary time, and then you are using your individualistic ideas in order to write your work of art. Okay,
Okay.
so that dead poet, Nidhi, becomes the skeleton. It is the skeleton, okay, of your work. All
Okay.
right, it is the bone, it is the structure of your work upon which you base your whole creative talent. Okay, you've got a
Mhm.
skeleton that supports you, and then you've got a, just think it poetically, Nidhi. You have a good skeleton, good structure, tall and well built skeleton. So that means when you are wrapped in your flesh and skin, then you look even more beautiful in that structure. Okay, so likewise, poetry is also like that. You have a great poetic past, and when you base your writing very intellectually, but no copying, very intellectually, you base it from your historical poetic past. Okay, then only a good poetry can come up, according to him. That is tradition. Just remember this, both things is mixing. Okay, tradition and then individual talent. He is not saying mimicry, okay, like Aristotle and many other critics. He doesn't talk about imitating anything. He says that the tradition is there, okay, within you, it is hidden within you, and then what comes outside is individual talent. Remember this word, the way I'm telling you, you'll remember it in your exams. Okay, tradition is your skeleton. Okay, and think about a very well built skeleton, tall and strong and stout. Okay, and then also upon that, you have your individual flesh, and then your skin and your beauty. So how beautiful you will look. Okay, when you are individually, you are beautiful with a beautiful strong and stout skeleton within. So you are well built and your body is extremely beautiful. Remember this, you can apply it to Eliot's idea of tradition and individual talent. So tradition is a skeleton, and upon which the beautiful individualistic poetry is written. All right. So it is very intelligently mixing the two things, past with the present perception, through which you can write poetry. Okay. He is such a talented critic, just see. And also you will find that he's in tradition and individual talent, he's glorifying his country. Okay, he says that Europe has got a mind of its own. Okay, see how much stuck to the love towards his country with relation to literature. So he says that Europe has the mind of mind of his own. Okay, means there are actually intelligent people in terms of literature. And then he says that our European mind learns in time. It learns how to be much more important. Okay, than the private mind. Okay, he says that the whole European mind is always, always active in learning. Okay, so he's actually glorifying his country in terms of literature. But he says that this learning is not just showing off learning. No, not just external learning. Means externally they look brilliant, but internally they are shallow. Not that. Okay, he means a very alertness, a deep consciousness of the past will be there. Okay, and there are some people, very handful of people who have got greater sensitivity to their historical awareness. Not all are sensitive towards historical awareness. There are a handful of people who are historically aware. Okay, just as himself. Okay, he is very much historically aware, and he has got all the idea and intellectual take on the historical past of their country. Okay, and that is why he says that some can absorb knowledge. Okay, others must sweat for it. And then he says Shakespeare acquired more essential history from Plutarch. Okay, and most men could from the whole British Museum. So he's saying that how European people, they they struggle, they strive to gain knowledge. He says that those the creamy layer intellectual people, they simply absorb knowledge. It is easy for them to grab knowledge. There are other class of people, they have to sweat for knowledge, means they have to break their head to gain knowledge. इसका क्या मतलब है, इसका क्या मतलब है, pondering, looking at the reference books, working hard to gain knowledge. He says this is another class of people. Okay, another class of people are there who can learn from museum, British Museum. Okay, if you want to gain knowledge, you can have a look at the museum, at the a very non-bookish type of knowledge you can gain is from British Museum. So he's also glorifying their intellectuality. So if you cannot learn from yourself, you are free to refer to museum. You will get not lot of knowledge. So see how he's highly praising his nation. So if you read Eliot's poetry, and also if you read his criticism, you will find that he lays lot of emphasis on the surrendering of the artist himself to some larger authority. If you read his poems also, if you read Wasteland, you will find the same aspect there, that the artist is completely surrendering himself to the larger authority. Okay, to the whole life of poetry. Okay, so it will be very interesting for you to mark that. Uh, Sorry. It is very interesting to know, learners, that Eliot actually started with connecting poetic genre with culture. Okay. And he was also very much connected with his religion, that is Christianity, while he was discussing and writing poetry. Please remember this. He attached a lot of culture and religion while he was making creative literary works. Okay. So that was also added along with history, along with tradition. He added a pinch of culture also in his writing. Okay, so tradition for Eliot actually means your knowledge of the history of Europe. Okay, okay. So he says that now history doesn't mean the past that is dead. No, he is referring to that past which has changed from time to time, and that past after changing multiple times has come to present. So that has to be there in your writing, and that past should be interacting with the individual poet. Okay, so that past should have a communication and interaction with the present poet. Now this was tradition and individual talent. Then we'll see function of criticism. Now, during Eliot's early career, he had said that the poet critic is criticizing poetry in order to create poetry. Okay, poet critic means the critic who is making a criticism on poetry. Is the poet critic is criticizing poetry in order to create poetry. If you want to create a poetry, a real poetry, then you have to make a critical analysis of a poetry. Okay, so for Eliot, that went side by side, writing poetry, creative writing, and then making criticism. Both were running parallel in case of Eliot. Okay, so you will see that in Function of Criticism, this was published in 1923. Eliot gives his views on criticism very clearly, and he gives a very apt methodology of criticism that one must follow in order to understand the method of criticism. Okay. And according to him, criticism is the commentation and exposition of works of art by means of written words. So he says that it is a commentary and it is exposing a work of art with the help of words. If you want to talk about, or if you want to clarify a work of art, okay, then you need to give a proper comment and give a proper view of that work. Okay, so that could be made a criticism. So he's saying that criticism is very much unlike literature. Okay, and actually he says that criticism is dependent on literature. Literature is not dependent on criticism. Okay, because when literature is made, then only a criticism of it can be done. Okay, and vice versa cannot happen. Criticism is there, and out of that you cannot create literature. Literature creates criticism because you write, and then the criticism is made out of it. And then he gives very, very important theories. The first is the dissociation of sensibility, and second one, very important, is the objective correlative. Okay. So T.S. Eliot had rendered a lecture in University of Minnesota in 1956 in the name of the frontiers of criticism. Okay. And there he had said that there are a few notorious phrases which have had a truly embarrassing success in the world. Okay, he had said this. So actually, what he is trying to say is the dissociation of sensibility, and he was talking about the objective correlative. All right. Now, these phrases, these were initially the two phrases that later became important theories. They had occurred in the essays on the metaphysical poets and Hamlet, respectively. Okay. But this concept of these two theories, they were propounded by Eliot. Now, you have to refer to many other Eliot's essays. There you'll be able to, relate what these two ideas are. Especially if you read his collection of essays on poetry and poets, you will get a broad idea of these two concepts. Okay, because in that book he has written two essays on Milton. Okay, his first essay was written in 1936 and second was written in 1947. And these two works, essays on Milton, they reveal how Milton's work has become more conventional over years. Okay, it has become more conventional. It has become more. What do you say? More kind of inspiration for other readers. All right. Then he writes two more, one essay, Johnson as critic and poet. He talks about Johnson, 1944. So here he gives you, if you read that book, you will find that he's giving uh, he's widening your scope of critical study. Okay, by studying Dr. Samuel Johnson. Okay. Then he writes another essay, what is classic. There he talks about how you are going to differentiate between classic literature with others. Okay, and when you come to frontiers of criticism, he is giving a fine overview of his own achievement as a critic. Okay, he's telling you how he has achieved himself as a critic. He's giving you a broad literary criticism about or related to the works which were published in the first half of the 20th century. Okay, now he has written on the metaphysical poetry. All right, and here Eliot is talking about the difficulty in defining. He's saying that it is very difficult to define metaphysical poetry. Okay, because it is beyond physical, no. So he says that it is very difficult for if you make a criticism of metaphysical poetry, it is very difficult to define it. And he said that there are individual differences among the poets. Okay, which poets? Of the metaphysical poets, he says that there are vast differences. Although the age was called metaphysical age, but he said that there were lot of differences between the poets. One poet was completely contrary to other. Okay, but he gives example. He says that John Donne and Andrew Marvell also, okay, they had a kind of late Elizabethan quality. Okay, they had the reminiscence of Renaissance period. Then he says that there were other who were courtly poet. Okay, they followed. Courtly poet means belonging to same metaphysical era, but they were courtly poets, and they had the style and appeal of Ben Jonson. Okay. Then he says that there were other group of metaphysical poets who wrote devotional verses like Herbert, Vaughan, Croshaw. Okay. They were religious poets, devotional poets. So there was so much variation in metaphysical age. Okay. One poet was so topically different from, contextually different from the other. So he says that although there were so much variation in their perspectives, but one of the characteristic similarity of metaphysical poetry was that they used elaborate figure of speech. Okay, this is the exact criticism he gives, which we also use when we write about the metaphysical, quoting T.S. Eliot. He says that they used elaborate figure of speech, and they use a lot of conceit in their writing. This was a major similarity between between the poets. Okay, so he says that this metaphysical conceit typically you will find in typically embedded in done mostly. Okay, okay. Let us see what is this objective correlative. This is the idea that I was telling you. This objective correlative.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah.
Like as you said, embedded in dance poetry. So, ma'am,
Mm.
can we count on valediction as example to this?
Yes, 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 exactly,
Okay,
Habiba.
thank you, thank you.
In that, what is that valediction? Forbidden
Forbidden
mourning, no?
morning.
Yes, that is the best example, which talks about high conceit and
Yes, ma'am.
high using of very difficult figures of speech. So, Dunn's best example is that one. Very good, very rightly pointed out. Now, this objective correlative, this was first used by T.S. Eliot. He had written an essay on Hamlet. There he uses this word, this phrase, sorry, objective correlative. Okay, actually, if you read that criticism, you will find that he uses it with a different meaning. Okay, and this word was actually borrowed, not borrowed, but was used by one American aesthetician also. In lectures on art he had written, and there he had used, but T.S. Eliot had no connection with that kind of American aesthetician. Eliot had uh, his own view, his own idea on objective correlative, means correlative objects. Okay, so according to Eliot, the only way of expressing your emotion in the form of art is by finding an objective correlative. Means, if you want to express your emotion in the form of art, then you have to find some objective correlative. Now, what does it mean? He says that there are set of objects. Okay, there are certain situations. There are certain chain of events. Okay, uh, so these things will make up to the formula of some particular emotion. Okay, words, objects, situations, events, they may be used in comprising certain emotion. Okay, now these things can be used in certain external facts which must help in sensory experience. Okay, so the emotion is immediately evoked. See, he gives an example. Maybe you are not able to understand this so much theoretically. He gives an example. Hmm. He talks about Shakespeare's play, Macbeth. Okay, he says that if you read Macbeth, you will find that the state of mind of Lady Macbeth, while she was walking in her sleep and she was having hallucinations, then you will see that the way it is communicated to you through Lady Macbeth's action. Okay, it is through some sensory impression. Now I can explain this to you in my own understanding. According to my own understanding, there are certain movies you will see, there are certain sensory expression by the artist, and which you can understand the state of mind of that artist, of that character. That is what is objective correlative. So he says that Hamlet, if you see Hamlet, Shakespeare's Hamlet, Eliot says that Hamlet was a failure because Shakespeare in that Hamlet, he was not able to find proper chain of events. He was not able to find set of words to evoke emotion. Okay, because if you read Hamlet, the drama, you will see that Hamlet is a very passive character, to be or not to be. Okay, when he came to know that the ghost of his father had come and he was seeking for revenge, still Hamlet was not confident what to do. Okay, how to seek revenge, what to do. Should he take revenge or not? Should he kill his uncle or not? So that was moving in a very psychological level, for which Shakespeare could find no dialogues, no words, because that was completely psychological. Okay, during those days, that deep understanding of psychology had not come up. All right, so Shakespeare was not able to express, and that is why it was a failure. Shakespeare was a failure. Just hold on, students, 1 second. Yeah, so he was not able to write dialogues. Okay, or neither was he able to, set proper chain of events. One is happening after another, one incident is happening after another. That was not there in Hamlet. Okay, so that did not have objective correlative. Okay, that means there was no correlation between one event to the other. So Eliot says that if you see Macbeth, Lady Macbeth, in Macbeth there was a scene when Lady Macbeth was having sleep walking scene. Okay, so and in the speech that Macbeth makes when he hears of his wife, walking like that while she's sleeping. So there, the way Macbeth is expressing. Lady Macbeth's grief, you are able to understand that yes, Lady Macbeth is now feeling guilty because she had conspired to kill King Duncan. If you have read the story, you must be knowing. Okay, so the way Macbeth is expressing, you are able to understand Lady Macbeth's psychological plight. Whereas if you see Hamlet, Prince is dominated by emotion which is not expressible. If you read that, you will understand that those feelings cannot be expressed. There cannot be second character to express Hamlet's condition. That's not possible. Okay, so that is why there was no proper correlation of emotion, a correlation of emotion with dialogues in Hamlet. And according to Eliot, that is why Hamlet did not stand as much as a hit as Macbeth did. Okay, now we'll move on to the next critic with this. Next is F.R. Lewis. Okay. Now, although Lewis is a great critic, but after this, you will find some minor critics. We can go through very smoothly with those. Now, F.R. Lewis is Frank Raymond Lewis. He was born in 1895, died in 1978. He was born in Cambridge. Okay, and in Cambridge also he lived much of his life. He was a highly proficient, educated person. And if you see his lifespan, 1895 to 1978, means he has witnessed both the world wars. Okay, and then he had his quarterly journal publication called Scrutiny. He used to publish. Okay, and he had written very wide literature. Actually, he had written popular literature. Okay, and his publications include Civilization and Minority Culture, published in 1930. New Bearings in English Poetry, published in 1932. Re-evaluation 1936. The Great Tradition, George Eliot, Henry James, Joseph Conrad, he publishes in 1948. D.H. Lawrence, novelist. These are all critical works. Dickens, the novels, so on and so forth. So here you see, professionally he was a teacher, and he taught his pupils the approach to literature which advocated close attention to the text. So he propagated his students to read the text by paying close attention to it, and he gives us sharp discrimination in evaluating the text with all what was important to him, and he taught literature with missionary zeal. Okay, and he, according to him, study of literature was the only thing that could save us from becoming demons and uh, uncivilized people. So he says that if you read literature, literature is beyond technological age, literature is beyond scientific studies, and literature actually will help you not to become demons, not to become evil creatures. Okay, and his very important slogan was literature matters because life matters. Okay, so see how deep love he had with literature.
Ma'am, the statement is given by whom? Like, who gave the statement?
F.R. Lewis, no, I'm talking about F.R. Lewis.
Okay, okay.
Hmm. So he says,
Ma'am, could you please repeat the statement?
literature matters because life matters. And I'm
Thank
repeating
you.
this whole idea. According to him, it is the study of literature only that can keep a human as a human being. It will, it will keep you away from being demons and crooked people. Okay, so he says that what literature can give, no technological study can give, no scientific study can give. Literature, according to him, was of the highest values. Okay, now let us see some important work of Lewis. Now, uh, Lewis also belongs to that great tradition of English literary criticism. Okay, he belongs to the great tradition of English literary criticism, and you can trace his writings with, you can connect his writings with Dryden, Pope, Dr. Johnson, Coleridge, and Matthew Arnold also. Okay, and F.R. Lewis is very close to Dr. Johnson when he is laying stress on the moral value of work of literature. So, as I told you, he was a missionary critic, especially because he laid stress on moral value, on the morality of literature. Okay, and you know, he has um, he has defined history. He has looked upon history of English poetry from a new critical perspective. Okay, so the criticism of fiction was actually very important attempt to win for fiction the kind of verbal analysis that he gives. Um, uh, Actually, he gives a new kind of criticism for novels, for fiction works. Okay, earlier you saw critics are very much confined with poetry, but here F.R. Lewis moves on to give his critical approaches, his critical analysis, evaluations towards fiction writing also. Okay, so according to Lewis, whatever is the genre, Lewis always supports his arguments by quoting the text. Okay, he says that whatever is the genre, if you want to substantiate the genre critically, then you must quote it from the text, and you must show what it is trying to say. Okay, so he says that if you are quoting from the text, you are giving some facility to the readers, and you are facilitating upon the critical debates. Okay, if you disagree or agree, it will give you clarity if you are quoting from the text. Okay, so Lewis always emphasized his uh, lack of interest in abstract principles. जो abstract idea होते थे, he did not believe. Okay, abstract, I think you understand. Abstract actually, what does it mean? It means not particular, not exact, vague. Okay, कहीं कहीं पर absurdity भी आता है, that is abstract. So Lewis was not in favor of that kind of abstract principle. Okay, and he always believed in the empirical textual approach to literary criticism. And if you talk about Lewis' ideology, then according to Lewis, his ideology was that you cannot practice anything in literature without theory. Okay, so he says that, uh, however, if you try hard to suppress one theory, okay, you cannot create literature. You cannot create a good piece of literature without its theory. So, according to Lewis, uh, criticism should be very expressive. Criticism should be based on certain realistic theoretical practices. Okay, so according to him, critical evaluation should have expressive realism. Okay, there has to be some deep connection with realism. Now, moving on, there's nothing, much important thing beside this, whatever I had explained. Now we'll move on to other critics. We'll go to John Crow, Ransom. We'll go to Cleanett Brooks also. Now, John Crow Ransom, uh, he was born in 1888, died in 1974. Again, one of the writers who has seen both world wars. Okay, and he was also university educated person. Okay, and he had studied in Oxford University, and he had taken a degree in 1913, and he had taken part in First World War also. And after coming from First World War, he started teaching in a university called Vanderbilt University. He taught here till 1937. Okay, and you have to remember this. He was one of the leading members of the group of writers known as the Southern Agrarians. Okay, he was known as the Southern Agrarians, or his group was also known as the Fugitives. Okay, now his group of writers included Cleanett Brooks, also Alan Tate is very famous. Robert Penn Warren belonged to his group. Okay, and all these are identified with the rise of the theory of new criticism in America. So all these writers, including Cleanett Brooks and John Crow Ransom, they shared certain similar religious, political, and cultural convictions. Okay, and they were conservative in their nature. All right, and they had their deep connection with Southern America. Okay, and many leading poets of the time were his own friend Alan Tate. Then there was another poet called Donald Davidson, Robert Penn Warren, Randall Jarrell. Okay, they were considered to be his mentors. Okay, now this John Crow Ransom, he became a famous poet. Okay, uh, he famous poet. Okay, but he was not that highly appreciated poet. But he had certain similar perspectives with that of T.S. Eliot, just like T.S. Eliot was anti-romantic, and T.S. Eliot had a bit of neoclassical trace in his perspective. All right. So John Crow Ransom also believed in T.S. Eliot's perspectives of anti-romanticism and neoclassical traces. Now, he had propagated a theory called Criticism Inc. INC. Criticism Inc. Now, Criticism Inc. is an essay which was first published in the quarterly called Virginia Quarterly Review in 1937. Now, in this particular criticism, he makes a strong request for the development of literary criticism. He requests that literary criticism should get more developed as a distinct discipline in university. Okay, now which has already happened. So he was the one to propose literary criticism to be one special paper in certain disciplines in universities. And he encouraged the new critical concept. Okay, and he had given a collaborative effort in understanding and evaluating literary texts, and he also encouraged the contemporary works of the time also to get critically approved. Okay, now, he doesn't like those historical scholarship. He did not prefer that time which was going on. Impressionistic ideas were going on. Emotional appreciation was going on. Okay, he did not believe in those kinds of critical approaches. Okay, which focused on abstract content of world literature. Okay, he believed in the realistic approaches. And in his essay, this particular essay, Criticism Inc., he says that you have to review, first of all, the current state of criticism. Which way the criticism is going, first you have to understand that. Okay. And then he feels that uh, there are certain critics who feel that no special training is needed to be a literary critic, but that is not so with Ransom feels that whoever wants to make a criticism, he needs the kind of competence that three different people possess. If you want to become a critic, then you should have three different qualities from three different professions. First, from the artist, the philosopher, and you should have the competence of the university teacher of English. Okay, according to him, if you want to be a critic, you have to have these three qualities: the qualities of an artist, the qualities of a philosopher or a thinker, and then the quality of the university teacher of English. So he says that if you want to evaluate the work of an artist, sorry, if you take the quality of of the artist for your evaluating a text, then the your criticism will bring some intuitions. Okay, some instinctual characteristics will be there in your criticism if you're borrowing artists perspectives. Okay, and if you want to take philosophers perspectives, then you have to use the philosopher's point of view about the function of fine arts. Okay, uh, how the philosopher takes fine arts into consideration, that you have to take. Okay, means no, nothing to intimate, no kind of intimation of knowledge, but you have to be very thoughtful when you are writing about some artist, about some work of art. Okay, and if you are taking philosopher's stance, then your point of view should not be generalized. It should be different from others. Your observation should be very minute. And if you are taking the perspective of university professor, then you should take charge of critical activity. Okay, not which are not very much professionally you have to write. So in that way you are borrowing a professor's point of view. So professors are actually very learned men who are ready to spend a lifetime in compiling the data of literature. Okay, uh, so you have to grab their perspective, their the way they are professionally, so that you can write a good piece of critical work. Okay, and he says that your criticism should develop very system with inserting very systematic effort of learned people. Okay, and proper method should be followed, and certain people who have mastered over all this, they can write good critical work. uh, Means who are borrowing artistic intuition, those who are borrowing philosophical and thoughtful and in depth evaluation, like philosophers. And thirdly, if they borrow a professor's ingenuity, while while expending while spending their time in writing with very serious intention, then only those people who are ready with all these qualities, they can write a good successful criticism. So it should not be, writing of criticism should not be generalized for everybody. You have to be professionally ready to make a criticism. This was John Crow Ransom. Then next, moving on, we'll see Cleaneth Brooks. Now, Cleaneth Brooks was born in 1906. We don't know when he died. Okay. And he also studied in the similar university where Ransom was a student, Vanderbilt University. Okay. And he was also a scholar of Oxford University. Excuse me. So just like Ransom, he was also member of the fugitive group, also called the Southern Agrarians. Now, he had a work called the Southern Review. This was an edited work which was published from 1935 to 1942 by Brooks and his friend called Robert Penn Warren. Okay, so actually this was the critical group. Okay, and where they published the Southern Review were critical works. Okay, now Cleaneth Brooks was a professor of English at Louisiana State University. Uh, and then he moved to Yale University, was the professor there. Okay. Now, his best work is the collection of essays only. The Well Wrought Urn, this is very famous. You have to remember this. The Well Wrought Urn, Well Wrought, W-R-O-G-H-T, W-R-O-U-G-H-T, Urn, U-R-N, Urn, Studies in the Structure of Poetry. This was published in 1947. Then he had published a book called Modern Poetry and the Tradition, published in 1939. Okay, and then he wrote Reevaluation, 1936. All right, and then he writes William Faulkner, the Yoknapatawapa Country, published in 1963. So these are some of his major works. Now, he has his theory called irony as a principle of structure. Now, in 1948, Brooks published one article called Irony and Ironic Poetry. Okay, and he says that irony as a principle of structure is the idea which he expanded and he published in 1951. Okay, so during those days, during these years, new critical methods, they had found space in the university teaching, new critical methods. Okay, now this article that he writes, irony as a principle of structure, um, uh, it actually represents Cleaneth Brooks' approach. Okay, so just like Lewis, Brooks also never tries to spare his time on general things. Okay, that's what I have explained. But he works only through concrete examples. Okay, means he doesn't believe in abstract things. He believes in concrete examples. So his theoretical essays, you will find they are full of perspective, full of close reading of variety of texts. I'm repeating this for you. if you find his theoretical essays, you will find that his product of those theoretical essays, they are a product of huge reading. You not only huge but close reading, very accurate reading of variety of texts. Okay, and uh, though you will find him little bit more bent and partial towards metaphysical poetry, that you will find. But apart from that, if you find his critical essays, you will find him that he gives very close reading, very deep reading. After his deep understanding, he makes his critical work. Okay, now before Brooks starts his essay on irony, he lays stress on the importance of metaphor. Okay, irony is different figure of speech, but he gives a lot of importance on metaphor. So he says that a poet can reach universal appeal only through certain particular uses of figures of speech. Okay, so the poet does not begin with any abstract theme. इधर उधर कुछ भी complicated नहीं बोलना चाहिए, according to Cleanet Brooks. Okay, the only valid method to start with individual detail and then work towards general meaning. So first he says that when you are writing some critical work, go from particular to general. Okay, such and such happens in my house, so it might be happening in all my neighbor in my neighborhood. Okay, so maybe like that. So actually, uh, he talks about certain minute particularities. Okay, that you must lay stress on. So Brooks uses memorable similes. Okay, like kite flying. Okay, and he gives an example of similes with the help of kite flying. Okay, he says that the long tail of a kite, see the figure of speech, the long tail of the kite, though it adds to the weight of the kite, gives it stability and direction. So you can see metaphorically or personifically, he talks about the kite. He compares the kite to the universal meaning, and the tail he is giving to the particular meaning which weighs down the kite, which might weigh down the kite. So he is going from general, the body of the kite, to particular, to the tail of the kite. Okay, so similarly criticism should be like that. It must move from certain general principle to particular principle. Okay, now this is the major idea of Cleanet Brooks in his critical work. And if you see Cleanet Brooks' success, then you will find that his book, The Well Wrought Urn, is very famous. Okay, and modern poetry and the tradition come secondary to The Well Wrought Urn. It is very important for you to remember this name. Brooks had written The Well Wrought Urn. Okay, and he was the theoretician who always supported criticism by close reading. Okay, and he always followed certain importance of figures of speech in critical reading. Okay, now the next comes W.K. Wimsatt, the next critic, and Wimsatt gives the theory of intentional fallacy. Okay, and actually by this intentional fallacy, he means to give a design or plan in the artist's mind. Okay, intentional fallacy. So according to him, critics and poets of every century, uh, he believed that in order to judge these poets performance, we must know what they intended to say. Okay, and they feel that we must evaluate the work of art by seeing whether the artist achieve his intention or not. Okay, if you are criticizing, he gives a different angle. He says, if you want to know if the art know the kind of work, then you must evaluate that work, that part of literature, by seeing if the artist has achieved his intention or not. Okay, so the, this was a school of thought that was propagated by Wimsatt, and he has actually he was challenged by new critics. New critics argue that the artist's intention of the creator are not relevant when judging a work of art. What is artist's intention? That is not relevant according to new critic. But Wimsett is saying just the opposite. He says that no, intention is very important. Okay, what he's intending to write, that we must know. This is the idea of uh, uh, Wimsett, and he says that in his Intentional Fallacy, which was published in 1946, he talks about he gives justification to his point of view. So his point of view uh, is actually authorial intention, and he says that this authorial intention has an effect on every aspect of literary criticism. So according to him, the author's intention is primary, okay, because he shows the design or the plan in the author's mind, and the author's attitude towards his work, how he feels when he is writing, what made him write that kind of literature, that kind of piece of creative work. You can assess that through his intention. Okay, that you have to study according to um, uh, Wimsett, and if you do not do that, so that is a fallacy that you make. Now we shall stop here, and you can wait for your teacher. I think is not yet joined. While I go offline, just wait for him because he'll have his class today.
No, no, I'm here, madam.
Oh, Tapas, you're there. Okay, I'm so sorry. Tapas, sir, to continue while I leave. I didn't know when you joined. Okay, what time?
Good evening, everyone. Now we have MEG-8. So MEG-8, those who are having, you may please remain in this class. Others may kindly leave. Yogesh, Dia, and Purba. So you have MEG-8, right?
No, sir, I don't have, but I want to take the class.
Okay, you want to take the class?
Can
No
I?
problem. No problem.
I
Okay,
have
thank you, sir.
MEG 8, yeah,
Yes.
so which is why I'm going to stay on in this class. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're having MEG-8, right?
That's right. Yeah, I have.
Okay. 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 And Yogesh? Okay. It's not replying. Fine.
Sorry, come again?
No, 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 no. I'm not asking you. I was asking Yogesh, the other participant who is there. Okay. So today we will be doing the novel Ice Candyman by Bapsi Sudhwa. So, Purba, before I start, I would like to know a little bit about you, your background. Because I think this is your first class in my session. Purbadat, can you hear me? Hello, am I audible? Hello, hello.
Yes, sir, audible.
Dia, okay. Dia, would I'd like to know you. You're from where?
Hello.
Yes,
Good
Dia.
evening, sir. My name is Riya Sharma, and I'm from Delhi, and I have opted for MEG 1, 2, 3, and 5. And I'm only taking this class to know more about the MEG 18
Yeah, yeah, sure,
books
sure.
and
Yeah,
yes, sir.
you're most welcome.
Okay, thank
Purba,
you, sir.
would you can I know about you?
I'm
Okay.
so,
Anyway,
so, so
so
sorry. I do not have MEG 8. No, I don't have MEG 8. I'm so sorry.
okay, 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 okay. So yeah. So talking about Bapsi Sidhwa, is a Pakistani novelist of Gujarati Parsi Zoroastrian descent who writes in English and is a resident in the United States. And she was born in Karachi in 1938 and later moved to Lahore where she witnessed the partition of India and Pakistan as a child. So you find she has written four novels that reflect her personal experience of partition, women's rights, immigration, and Parsi culture. And she's best known for her collaboration with filmmaker Deepa Mehta, who adapted her novel Ice Candy Man and Water into the films Earth and Water. And you find she has received many awards and honors for her work, including the Sitarai Imtiaz, the Star of Excellence Award by the government of Pakistan in 1991, and the Mondello for foreign authors for water in 2007. Ice Candy Man, if you talk about Ice Candy Man, was also, published as Cracking India, which is, it was, third novel. And this was published in 1988, and it is a historical fiction that, narrates the events of partition through the eyes of a young Parsi girl named Lenny Sethi, okay, who is based on Sidhwa herself. And Lenny, lives in Lahore with her affluent family and their Hindu ayah, that is Nani, who is, quoted by men of various religions. And you find Lenny observes the changes in her society as, communal violence erupts between Muslims, Hindus, and the Sikhs. And she also, witnesses the horrors of partition, such as, mass killing, rapes, and migrations. And the novel also explores, the themes such as identity, loyalty, betrayal, innocence, and violence. So it also portrays the diversity and the complexity of partition, Lahore, and the impact of partition on women and the minorities. So coming to the setting of this novel, we find the novel Ice Candy Man by Bakshi Sitwa is set in pre-partition India. Pre-partition India in Lahore, and the novel describes the events of the turmoil on the Indian subcontinent. When it is divided into